Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Joining me today is Courtney McLeod. She's the founder and principal of Right Meets Left Interior Design, an award-winning Manhattan-based full-service design studio. An avid colorist at heart, Courtney draws from a kaleidoscopic toolbox of texture, pattern, and color to create rooms evocative of one emotion above all others, and that's joy. Her work has been featured in print, both in the U.S. and abroad, including the cover of Aspire Design and Home Magazine and Luxe Magazine. She has been named a 2019 Style Spotter by the High Point Market Authority and included on the 2019 list of emerging designers by Luxe Magazine. Courtney is an S. Harris brand ambassador. Prior to founding the firm, Courtney earned a business degree from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and completed design-related studies at Parsons, Pratt, and the New York School of Interior Design. The name Right Meets Left perfectly reflects her approach to the design process, rooted in the balance of creative design, which is totally right brain, and analytical rigor, the left brain. The spaces she designs express both her client's unique taste and her vivid, collected aesthetic. Courtney and I shared the stage at Luann Live when we talked about Chapter 3 in the book. And the book is The Things I Learned from a Well-Designed Business, the Power Talk Friday Experts. And Chapter 3 just happens to be my chapter on pricing for profit from the beginning. Courtney and I both share a beginning career steeped in financials, and yet we both struggled to bring it down to our creative businesses immediately when we started. It took structure and inspection to be able to apply the principles that we both knew were critical to our success. And on today's podcast, we're going to pick up where we left off on the stage and talk more about the underpinnings of our business and how those are supporting us where we are and for where we want to be. We had such a great conversation, we just didn't want it to end. And I believe you won't be ready for it to end either. Enjoy the podcast. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Courtney, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been so excited to talk to you. We met right before Luann Live. We were both on the panel together talking about pricing and profitability and all of that. We had a lot in common, and you are, as she says, one smart lady. And so I've just been impressed with you, with your work, with, oh my gosh, I feel like I just have such great conversations. I just have been like, oh, I couldn't wait. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I just met this really great friend. And I wanted to have you on because I feel like we started a conversation and on the stage that I would love to continue with you because, again, you're a super smart lady. And one of the things that I think, one of the points that we made, both of us, when we were on that stage, and I want to just put a couple of big virtual exclamation marks behind, is that, and I'll let you tell a little bit more about your background, Courtney, but we both came from backgrounds of finances, accounting, numbers, business. And then we both didn't have it before we ever started the aha moment of how to put all of that into our micro business. And so we both kind of realized as we were starting to get into it, oh my gosh, like I know this in a grand way for big business. Why didn't I think about it? And then had to stop and be intentional about watching the numbers and the finances and the profitability within our business. And I think that's important because a lot of people think that if we have that information that we come at, especially a creative business doing something that we're passionate about with all of that up front. And that's just not the way that it happened for most of us.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. I couldn't have put it better myself. It's, when you're working in some form of financial services in that industry, it's completely different, from the economics of a small business. I think that the commonality comes from just a comfort around numbers and the concept of, financial reporting and tracking and things like that. I think that's where it's a little bit of an advantage. But absolutely, from day one, I mean, I had to teach myself this business, creative and financial. I had no idea. And so I bought a book called Professional Practice for Interior Designers. I literally, as a textbook, I read it cover to cover. I mean, I did not know anything. And that was sort of the start. And sort of understanding how the business works and how that would translate to me personally in my business was a learning curve. And I think the benefit for me was that from the first year, I was profitable. Period. It was a little bit of profit.
Now, was that profit on top of paying yourself a salary, or profitable as we just looked down the P&L?
Just on the P&L for that first year, which I sort of took as a win, because I literally was starting from zero. I had no connections. I literally was starting from zero. And so for me to have any profit, as I defined it, was really, kind of a vote of confidence. And I used that first year to start to understand, okay, what does a cost structure in this business look like? What are the important places that I'm going to need to spend and invest? And of course, that first year, my operating expenses were very low to support, my small business. But over the years, as my business has grown, I've really kind of experimented on the operating expense side, on, where to sort of put those resources. If it's into heavier towards, marketing or PR, is it heavier towards staffing? Is it heavier towards, sort of business consulting, or, office space, or sort of all of those different things? I didn't sort of walk in from day one and understand exactly where the right investments would be.
Well, and the investment changes. Yeah. And the investment changes based on what year you're in, what the needs are, what the season of your business is. So, the needs at the beginning are not necessarily the same needs in the middle and at the end, or, anywhere in between there. So
definitely.
I love that. And you and I both know that, and I celebrate with you that profit in the first year, but we also know that a company's profit, and I'm just saying this for the listeners,
sure,
but a company's profit on a P&L that does not include the salary to the owner is still not a sustainably profitable company. Yes. Because what we really want to look at after we've been in business for a little bit is a company profit separate from owner's salary.
Yes.
And so you knew that, I mean, that is a huge win on year one, because you're doing all this investment to build the business, right?
Yep.
But that's not going to pay your grocery bill and your family bills long term if there's not enough to take out of it to bring home.
Yep.
And so that probably was enough shot in the arm to go, okay, this is viable. I'm not outdoing my expenses, in the first year, and investment.
Yep.
Now what do I need to do to tweak this to be able to start paying myself and still have some left over in the company?
And also, I was really intentional at the beginning, because it was a very big financial change.
Yes.
I was in an industry where, the compensation is quite high. And so I was intentional about changing my lifestyle to right size it to what I anticipated my new income level would be, at least for the first few years. So I moved to, a less expensive apartment, and, I just sort of intentionally changed those things.
Right.
So that it would be less.
It wasn't so heavy on
Exactly. And again, it was sort of to take pressure off of myself, so that because I knew I was going in at zero, I knew I was going to need time to learn the industry, build the relationships, but also to build the creative confidence.
Yes.
You know, I knew I could do it, but confidence is a funny thing. You can't just walk in and say, I'm confident. It has to build.
It has to build.
It has to build. And, now I'm at a place where I feel incredibly creatively confident. And I think that has done so much to building confidence on just the business side. You know what I mean? I think people underestimate how hand in hand the creative confidence goes with, sort of the business growth and strategy confidence. It's all part of the same, recipe for success. So I think from the very beginning, I was intentional to try to give myself the runway to get there. And I'm so glad I did, for financial reasons, but personal reasons as well. I'm just so glad I approached it that way. And so, I had that time to slowly build, which I think was important.
And I love how you segmented out confidence creatively, confidence in business. I would even break that down and say, like, for example, I am very confident in the financial running and maneuvering in a business. I am not as confident maybe in the marketing, every marketing thing, right? So I'm building my marketing confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else says, hey, I'm really great I've got the confidence to market. I'm building my hiring confidence. There's always these segments or aspects of business, and we're, especially when we start, we're going to be stronger in some than in others. And I love that saying of, you get what you inspect, not what you expect. And so it's really about being intentional and keeping your eyes on it and keeping your attention on it and analyzing it to figure out, how do I get better at this or more confident at this? And especially when you start a creative business, your goal is, I want to make money, but I've got to build a creative confidence so that I even have a product to sell, if you will.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned marketing, because for me, that's been such a growth area. Mm-hmm. When I came in, I have no idea about marketing. It just was this black box. And a lesson I learned around that is to be careful what you tell yourself. Mm-hmm. For a few years, I just was like, marketing, I just can't. And I realized that I was kind of learning it and kind of doing it without really realizing, in terms of developing relationships, establishing relationships with brands, creating opportunities that way, getting exposure, PR exposure. And it really was probably the last year or two that I said, wait a second, I'm not bad at this marketing thing.
Right.
And it was almost like once I told myself that, or allowed myself to embrace the idea that, no, you know what, this isn't something beyond me. It's become so much easier and so much more enjoyable. And so I was having a conversation with a designer friend of mine the other day, and she was saying how the numbers are just so like over her head, and she just can't, sort of wrap around. And I said, I felt that way about marketing. It was such a black box. It was so overwhelming. And it wasn't until I, sort of reversed that internal dialogue and allowed myself to learn that it changed. And so, it's such a lesson, because a lot of people I hear, they just say, oh, the numbers, it's just, so much. And if you tell yourself that, that's what it's going to be, period.
I've had the same experience that you've had. I think we even mentioned on stage, if you tell yourself you can't, or something along those lines. And and
I'm such a believer in that. I really am.
Yeah. And I have done a lot of the same things. I think because I have been so focused on financials and understanding and the financial growth, not of my company, but of other, like really helping people have those tools, that I kept thinking I don't have the time for marketing. That was one thing I told myself. The second thing over the years that I've told myself is I'm not great at marketing. I'm more of a financial person. And then I go out and realize I've been working with a couple of different people over the last couple of years, and they're like, oh my gosh, like you've done all these things, like you're a dream. And I was like, well, wait a minute. And so this year, I've told everybody, I have a business coach same way that, I advise and coach others. I get somebody to look into mine because I don't see what I'm in the middle of.
Right.
And she challenged me this year. She's like, Michelle, this is the year of marketing excellence for you. And she's like, so what I want you to do is we've got to change your mindset. Even the small things that you don't think about, we've got to change the words that you tell yourself. Now, I do this all day with telling people, you can understand your financials. You can. But marketing, I had allowed it to be the same closet that I wanted to shut, or like you said, the same black box of marketing. And so I sat down in January and wrote down 10 affirmations around marketing. Writing it as if it already was, as if it is. And then I read them to myself, and I keep reading to them to myself. And it was,
I like that.
Yeah. And it was, some of them were things like, I understand the marketing of my company. I am happy with the marketing that I am doing. It is something along the lines of, as I have chosen awesome companies to collaborate with. So by saying it as if it already was, number one, we know that with mindset, it rewires the brain to think you've already done it. So it's already built this pathway that I've already done it. So that when I've done it, the brain just like, well, yeah, duh, Michelle. But the second thing that it does is it changes that 8-track tape or cassette or CD player or MP3 or whatever it is that we now have based on age, but it changes the recording in our brain that tells us we can't and tells us we can. It's that little engine who could, right? I think I can. And when it's like, I know I can do that. Like, I'm a smart woman.
It's true.
If I can do everything else that I've done, why could I not do that? Now, it doesn't mean I might not need assistance. And I'm not saying that. I still have assistance. I have a marketing team. I have a branding team. I've got a website team. I have an automation team right now. I've got a strategist. I mean, I've got people, but it means that when they come to me, I work to understand what they're saying to me. I work to dig in. And if it's a problem, it needs to be solved. And why would I think that I don't have the same me that could go in to help solve business problems, the same you that goes in to solve, a problem in somebody's space? It doesn't mean you don't get help. It doesn't mean you don't have assistance. But by goodness, you're a smart woman. There's nothing that says any of us couldn't go do it if we put our mind to it and say we want to do it.
And I think it's the same muscle that you work when we talk about, what you track is what grows. I think that it comes from, the same place, because I think I can speak for myself. If I'm not tracking something or I'm hesitant to track something, it's because there's fear around it.
Yes.
It's because I know it's a weak area, And
you don't want to see what the numbers are going to bear out.
I don't want to. It's denial.
I don't want to know. Okay, so there's another phrase that says what we focus on expands.
Yes.
So, my kids would say to me, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, they would wake up and they're, today's going to be a terrible day. And I would go, you're right. It is going to be horrible. And they would, this is like over breakfast. I'm like, Mom, why are you telling me that? Like, that's not helpful to me. And I said, but you're walking out the door telling me how horrible it's going to be. That means that because you're focusing on the horribleness of the day. Every single thing you look at is through the lens of how horrible the day is. So because you're focusing on it being horrible, it's going to be horrible. It's going to expand and get bigger. It's not a terrible, no good, very bad day kind of look, right? But if you say today's going to be a day of opportunity, or today's going to be a day of whatever we focus on expands. So if I choose to focus on my marketing because I notice it as a weak link for me in my business, or an area that I want to explore and understand better, to build that confidence muscle in. If I focus on it in a positive way, with that mindset going positive, like you suggested, Courtney, it will expand and it will actually happen. If I focus on, like you said, it being terrible, negative, harder, I can't do it, I'm terrible at it, it's going to show up that way, because that is the lens that everything that comes back to me, I'm going to go, well, there you go. Told you. Well, there you go. Told you.
And for me as well, one little trick that helped a lot was the word marketing gives me anxiety. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to call it that. I'm going to call it new business development.
Ooh,
and
like
that phrase, for whatever reason, is very energizing to me. And so it's kind of an umbrella term, that covers, client relationships and social media and PR and sort of marketing, the whole sort of bucket. But now I'm like, oh, here's my time blocked for new business development.
Right. So you know the term that I use?
What?
Impact.
Oh, I like that.
Because to me, and I do the same thing, I call it new business development. That word marketing, I think, breaks me out in hives. Mm-hmm. There's so many elements to marketing. It's its own umbrella, right? You got the advertising, which is different than PR, which is different than a sales funnel, which is different than this. Yep. So I just keep thinking, what is the impact that I want to make in the industry? What is the impact I want to make on business? And what is the impact I want to make in the lives of the people that I work with? And now, how do I reach more people to have a broader impact? If I truly believe in the message, if I truly believe in the work that I'm doing, then my goal is to offer it to as many people as I possibly can, not to hold it for a chosen few. And so I just keep looking at it, because sometimes marketing gives me that sleazy, slick feel. Yes. But if I think about it as, I'm not promoting myself, I'm promoting a solution and trying to have an impact. Who can I have the impact on? Who's the right person to impact? When is the right timing for that? And all of that's really a marketing strategy. So for you, it's new business development. For me, it's impact, but it's really the same kind of thing. It's putting it in the context of what it means to us. And I think that's what makes us willing to do it. That's what makes me excited about it. That's what makes me happy.
I really like the term impact, as I've been thinking about it, because I feel like that probably helps you be very intentional about where you're putting your time and financial resources within all of the categories of sort of marketing and all of, if you're like, where do I want to make the impact? I like that. I'm gonna steal that.
And please, because and I love it too, because it's impact on so many levels. So to your point, it's where in the industry do I want to have an impact? What is that impact? How does that impact a person? How does it impact the business? How does it impact their life separate from their business? And then when I look at all of that as it aligns with my why, the Simon Sinek why, it helps me keep everything within my value set, within my why, with the impact that I want to make. And it doesn't make me feel sleazy, because now I had Kay Whitaker on talking about email marketing from Luann Live. And I said to her, I've been sending out more emails. So if any of you are on my list, I hope you're enjoying them. I'm trying to be intentional. But her thing was, Michelle, you're actually withholding impact by only sending one email and cramming everything in it, because it's too much to be absorbed. So what if you were to send 4 smaller emails and the impact is greater because you've given them one bite, one piece of something to look at? And here I was thinking that I was going to irritate them or bother them. So I had reduced my marketing strategy, been a best kept secret, out of fear that I was overwhelming them. And she said, what if you were overwhelming them by sending them one long email? What if you had a greater impact on them by 4 smaller emails? And I was like, duh, I hadn't thought about it. So now I don't feel sleazy sending out those emails, because they are with intent. They have actionable information. They're not salesy, and they have bite-sized pieces that can be absorbed quickly. And so it shifted it, as we have been talking about impact.
Right? It's funny. I listened to that episode, and I felt like I was like every question you were saying or every concern you had, I was like, oh my God, that's exactly because the email marketing part is something where it's sort of a learning area for me now. And so, yeah, it was funny. That was a really good conversation.
Where I kept getting, I'm like, oh, these people are spammy. They're spamming me. Quit spamming.
Totally.
And then I didn't. And then out of fear of being that spammy person, which to me is just sending an email for email's sake, not sending one for impact. And so that's why that word has, and then again, it makes me stop and think, what is the return on all of my investments? Which ones are a slow return? Which ones are the longer return? And then how does my profitability, or how do the numbers on the P&L, do they show the impact I'm having? If they don't show the impact I'm having, maybe my pricing structure isn't great. So just taking that word and defining it, and then looking at it across all aspects, it actually also, I think, does a lot with how I deliver my programs and how I build relationships with my clients. And I know that it does for you. I mean, that's probably why the word resonates, because you're looking to have an impact in a community, in a home, in a space, in the industry, and in your own life.
Yep, it's really true. And I think it's also a good concept to kind of tie back to your pipeline, because I think it's so important to keep a list of, all of the potential clients, whether it comes through or not, and, what was the type of job and what was the source? Was it through a client referral? Did they see you in a magazine? Was it, through a contractor? Was it through your newsletter? And I think that's actually something that not a lot of people track. And I think it's such a powerful tool, and I constantly refer to it, especially as I'm kind of, going through my monthly and quarterly, I'm constantly referring, okay, this is what my pipeline looks like. Where are these potential opportunities coming from? Okay, which ones died? Which ones, came through? And I think tying that all together also helps you figure out, okay, where should I really be investing my time and money? Because if I'm investing a ton of time and a ton of money into, let's say my email marketing, and I'm getting, but like 90% of my clients are coming, from somewhere else, that's helpful information. You know what I mean? And so I think, and again, it goes back to that idea of intention and impact, the way that that you describe it, that, every dollar you spend, in your business, you have to be really thoughtful about it.
So you mentioned it a few minutes ago about how you played around with operating expenses, and you did some testing and where to spend. And I think that conversation ties in here very well, because as you're watching, right, when we first start, let's be honest, it didn't do you any good to understand all the profitability of your company if you have no sales coming in the door. I mean, I will say no good. It does good, but it is not going to pay the bills because you understand it if there are no sales. So one of the first places that money needs to be spent outside of getting our basics together, our contracts, our letter of agreements and process, like we need that to walk out. It's going to be tweaked. It's going to be changed. And I know that was part of one of your really great podcasts with Luann. So we have to have some idea of a system to get started, or we're in a hot mess. But sometimes we spend our money to begin at just trying to get outside of systems and getting some things set up, just trying to get sales in the door. Right. And then after we have enough sales that we're moving on, then we realize, oh my goodness, I need to look at this other part of my company. And now I need to look at the next part of my company. And so we move around within that. When you started, you mentioned to me in our pre-conversation that you had done a visioning exercise. Did you do that visioning exercise for your company before you started it, 1 year in, 2 years in? Where were you in the launch of this that you did the first visioning exercise?
It was in the second year.
Okay.
So I was still very early on, but I had a year under my belt. I was, feeling good. I was, I had my little pipeline happening. But I was like, okay, I worked with a coach because I said, okay, I think I need help to get myself to the next rung, if that makes sense. I need a little bit of guidance. And, one of the exercises that we did was a visualize yourself in 10 years, everything that you want, all your goals, just everything, but write it in the present tense. And I think that was really key.
And which is similar to my affirmations, right? Write it in the present, or if it's already happened, like this is just it.
Yep. Yeah. And it was so interesting because I was like, oh, what is that going to be? But I sat down and I literally wrote it out as like 2 paragraphs, and it just flowed out. And I didn't even really realize that I had this vision for myself. And I was really specific. I mean, I was very specific. And I still go back to that vision. And in a lot of ways, it's the same. In some ways, it's adjusted and changed, and some things feel more realistic, some things feel less realistic to achieve within that time frame. But I think it was just so powerful for me, and it's been such a good tool to have. And I think everyone should really do it, to just sit down and let your mind like fly and just really like what is that best case scenario,
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times, and it's funny. I even went back to my coach this year, and every year we review my vision, and because some things I've already accomplished, so I take them off and I add something else. But I'll say, for those that don't have the same experience that you had, Courtney, where it just kind of flowed freely, mine didn't come that way.
Oh, interesting.
I think it was because when I started for the coaching part, when I started this 6-7 years ago, there weren't that many coaches around. I didn't know another coach. So I didn't even know what the opportunity could be. It wasn't like I was coming into interior design and I could see, right? I didn't have a lot of examples in front of me to even have an idea of what it could be. So I struggled with what I wanted it to be and what I thought it would look like. And I remember I kept thinking to myself, but I know what I don't want, but I know what I don't want. And I was about 2 years in to the coaching. I started in 13, and in 15, I thought I need to vision this. Like I knew, right? I knew I needed to do it. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that my coach said to me was, she's like, Michelle, and I do this with my clients, if you cannot tell me what you want, but you know what you don't want, write that down. And so I started by writing everything I didn't want, which sounds weird to some.
No, that makes sense.
Okay, but that whole, and then I want to be this and I want to do that, because sometimes I felt breaks, or I felt this, I've never had this conversation, I don't think quite this way, but I felt some level of expectation from others that I should build certain things in certain ways, but they didn't feel normal to me. So I didn't want to make it part of my vision. Like, you and I talked about an empire versus a mini-pyre, and what are we trying to build here? And I was so new in that I wasn't sure what I wanted to build. Yeah. I really wanted it to breathe a little to determine what I wanted to build. Yeah. I'm just a bit more, I'm not a huge risk taker, so I'm just a bit more deliberative in that way. But I knew what I didn't want. I had come from owning with a team, a 9,000 square foot facility. I'd come with having team members. I'd come with having all these other things. And I knew in that moment, I didn't want to rebuild that. Right. So I knew that what I wanted was a little bit more laid back. I wanted something that was flexible. I wanted something that could pivot quickly. I wanted something that allowed me to do what I did best and to express the fullness of who I was. So I could tell you that, but I couldn't necessarily tell you, and I want to be in the building and I want to be making X millions of dollars with 52 on staff. I couldn't tell you all that, but I could tell you what I didn't want.
But it's two sides of the same coin.
It is.
In the design process, I always ask clients, don't just tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And often
it opened the floodgates.
Yeah, what they don't like is actually more helpful to me than what they do. So I actually think that's a really powerful way to approach it.
Right. I I had hoped that I could sit down like you and be able to put it out there, but I don't know if I had a mental block, an emotional block, a spiritual block. I don't know what the block was, but it wouldn't come to me that way. So what I did was I wrote down everything I didn't want to build, like what I don't want to feel like, what I don't want to have constraining me, what I don't want to have as pressure and stress. And by doing that, it actually enhanced and showed me what I did want, because we want the opposite of what we say we don't want. And then it showed up clearly what I wanted. And mine was more about the feeling than about the structure of what I was building. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It really does. And you know what, this is interesting because I was saying earlier that I'm a little bit at an inflection point and sort of trying to figure out what that sort of next leap looks like. And I've been struggling a little bit with it. And I actually think that exercise could be really helpful for me. I hadn't thought about sort of approaching it that way. I think, the more I think about it, filtering out what I don't want, now that I have a lot of
what you
what you do want, and now that I have enough experience with the business and the industry, that I have a much more sort of, I don't know if realistic is the right word, but I understand what's possible. Yeah. I don't want to be limiting, but I understand what's sort of possible. And so, All
right, so I'll give you another exercise to go with it. All right. Here's the second exercise that every client that I've had go through this comes back to me with like their head blown off, like, oh my gosh, I've got more clarity than I've ever had in my life, especially if we've been struggling in this way. So here's your second thing, Courtney. You ready?
Yep.
It's called look forward to look back. Again, a lot of people have trouble. Even if I were to say to you, I want you to just vision out 1 year. Tell me what your next year looks like. And I get a bunch of humming this and that. And I go, okay, stop. Here's what I want you to do. So right now, you and I are recording this in late summer of 19. Okay. All right. I want you to imagine yourself late summer of 2020.
Okay.
And I want you to sit in the space for just a moment that this has been the best year of your life. From summer of 19 to summer of 20 has just been the best year of your life. You have accomplished everything you wanted to accomplish. You have the relationships, personal and business, that you want to have. You're in a good place and a good spot with opportunities for the future. Describe the year you just lived.
I like that.
Right, because here's what it does. Here's what it does. It takes the pressure off looking forward and allows you to look back. And don't we always say we see things more clearly sometimes looking back than we ever did moving through? So what this does is it puts you in a position of you've already done it. So now I've taken the pressure off of you, Courtney, of here's what I need to accomplish. And I've said to you, Courtney, you've already done it. Girl, you are there. So now what I want you to do is look back and tell me what you just did. Tell me how you just rocked your world. Tell me about the vacations you've been on. Tell me who were the people that you were with. Tell me where you showed up. Tell me where you stood out. Tell me, just write it down and tell me what just happened that put you in the position to feel so great right now. And honestly, almost every single time the light bulb goes off and then you go, that's what I want. Like you don't even know that's what you want until you almost in your mind say you've already done it. There is I don't understand all the neuroscience, but there is something about saying that you've already done it that again, like we mentioned earlier, it's almost like it leaves breadcrumbs for the brain, so that saying that you've already done it makes the brain think you've already done it, so that as you're moving through it, that's why a lot of times when we do a risk analysis, you did those all the time in your corporate job. I did them all the time. So that by doing the risk analysis, looking at what could, looking at it and then assuming we've already dealt with it, we already have a plan, then when it happens, you just move into action mode. You don't stop and have the meltdown because I'd already planned for it. I'd already thought about it. It's already happened in my brain because I've already worked it out. It's the same thing with the things we want to accomplish. Saying them, writing these affirmations, coming at it from this idea of it's already happened. I'm saying it in the present. I'm saying it as if it's already done. It creates a power in our brain that we think we've already done it. Now we just go make it happen.
And that's a really interesting perspective to approach. Like I do my full, I write down my full year goals, and then I have like my monthly goals to kind of outline that, thinking from that perspective.
Right.
I really like that, because then it helps you to kind of have a full year game plan in a way.
Right. And I think the beautiful part about doing the look forward, look back exercise is if you look at it for the fullness of Courtney, so meaning personal, business, all of it, because we're not creating these businesses in a vacuum.
Yep.
And so this isn't about what can I do to put 24/7 into my business. It's so what can I do so that I am harmonious, I am centered, I'm balanced, I'm, whatever word you want to put in it, but that we're not one-dimensional in nature. And so then it really takes the goals, and we start to see, can that really be done in a year if I want to travel, if I want to breathe, if I want to have other relationships or do other things or explore other opportunities. And so it starts to look like, is this something I can do in 6 months, or is this really a year, or is this a year and a half? Like, where does it fit in? And then I'm a fan of taking the 1 year goal and breaking them down into quarterly goals, and then breaking my quarterly goals down into monthly goals.
Oh, 100%. When I started doing that really faithfully, it was so transformative. I mean,
it is.
Beyond.
There's a book called, and I'll link it in the show notes, The 12-Week Year.
Yeah.
And that's the one that I tend to follow it. I mean, I'm not a purist on anything, but that's the idea that I follow, is what are the traction, and is another great book for things like that, where you put rocks, but it's just the idea of what is it that I want to accomplish. So we might do that from my look forward to look back. Okay. So do I really think that is able to be done? What resources is it going to take? So even back to your conversation that you had with yourself and with your team, the operating expenses, like what resources, not just financial, but how much time is it going to take? Like you and I said in the pre-conversation, what is it going to take from me, and am I willing to give it?
Yeah.
I could have an empire. You could have an empire. Almost anybody listening these days, if they were that intentional, could have an empire. But is that the way you want to spend your resources? Time, effort, energy, love, relationship, all of it. Is that where you want to pour it? And so finding that balancing act. And
sometimes it's something really basic. A quick story. So this year, I made a real intention to get better about tracking and billing my hours more fully. And that had always been something I would get really busy, and then I'd sort of let it slide. And I knew I wasn't capturing as much as I should. And so I got extremely intentional about it this year. And, as I've looked at my first quarter and my second quarter closing out, and my time billing dollars, almost 50% more. I have not been working necessarily more. It's purely been a combination of building my rate and more fully billing my time. And I think
capturing the value of what you're
capturing the value. And it's like when you can see something so tangible, it is so powerful, because now boy, do I track my time accurately. You know what I mean?
It's not a theory anymore, right?
It's not a theory. And
Mhm.
it's so, I feel so much power in it now.
Yes.
Because I'm like,
Confidence.
and confidence. And so, yeah, it's really, you know, where you put your focus. And so it can be something even small, like that didn't require any resources. You know, all it required was me committing my time, my minimal amount of time to doing it.
Right.
And so, you know, I think it's important to look at the big areas, but also those little small areas where you're kind of sliding a little bit, or, you know,
No doubt.
you know, those areas where you're not, you know, being as intentional as you should be, and you'd be surprised what you can uncover. It's been quite a nice thing each month to say, whoa, look at that, you know.
So it's so interesting, and I totally agree with you on that. Sometimes people are afraid to call me because they're like, you're going to tell me that this is the story they're telling themselves, right? To make more money, I've got to do more work. I'm doing all I can do. I'm exhausted and I'm overworked. That's not what I tell them at all. I tell them exactly what you just discovered is, my goal is to help you work less, make more, not work more, make more. If we have to work more, make more, and I'm not talking about like we're building something that you got to work more to make more, but I'm talking about in the general day to day, we aren't setting something up right. We aren't being as efficient as we can. We have too much overhead or expense. Like something's got to change with that. And I would say almost every single time when we start looking at what is not being billed but is being done, so what value is not being captured?
Yep.
Right? Those that are afraid and they only mark up everything 10 and 15%, you can't stay in business like that for a very long time and make a lot of money. And I don't mean a lot, I mean enough to pay yourself a salary and have a profit. Like that's not going to do it unless you charge for every moment you breathe. And then nobody wants to do that. And so, you know, when we can tighten up those processes, and like you said, it's the small changes. If you think about it, it's the 1 degree sometimes. I think about, what was it, Apollo 13? You know, it was like 1 degree that meant if they actually made it back to Earth or if they didn't. It's that 1 degree, but that 1 degree over time becomes 40 degrees or 60 degrees. It changes.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes those small tweaks that make the huge impacts.
It's true. And I found something unexpected was that once I really was billing more fully, you know, I realized how much time I was kind of wasting too. It also helped me to just get more efficient, so that of, you know, the 10 hours I'm working, how many of those hours are really quality billable time versus, you know, time that I can't quite bill. And so that's also been,
which then led to guilt and to unrecouped time, right?
Yep.
So the other thing I was going to say is I'd be curious. I think I know the answer just from working with so many people, but I would love to hear yours just to see if I'm on the right track here.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that when you fully tracked all of your time, you realized how much time you were really spending, that maybe you had, in an effort to be fair to the client, maybe didn't think it was taking you that long.
Absolutely. Oh boy, yes.
You know what I mean? Because a lot of us come at this thinking, I want to be super fair to my client. I think I can do this in 40 hours. And if we were to really track it, it may be that it was 50 hours, but we wanted to be super fair. So there were 10 hours that we're working time and time and time again. And then, you know, we think, oh, well, maybe the answer is I won't charge by the hour, I'll charge by the project. But we only create the project billing at 40 hours. So we're still losing the same 10 hours, if not more, because now we've gotten lax because we aren't keeping up with the hours. So now instead of making money by doing this air quotes value pricing project, we're now losing money because we're working slower, maybe not as efficient. And we didn't even understand how long it was taking us in the first place.
Yeah. And, you know, to be clear, you know, I don't bill every single hour. You know, there are times when I'm doing sort of broader research or something like that, where, you know, I may not feel that it's appropriate to bill.
Right.
those hours are way less than they used to be. I feel much more confident in billing, more of those hours because I do feel like I'm spending them more efficiently. I'm not allowing myself to take 8 hours to find a dining chair. You know what I mean?
Right. So it also builds a couple of things here. So when you're really tracking, let's say in the example that we're using, really tracking your time.
Yep.
Number one, it makes you realize how efficient or inefficient you are, right?
Yep.
Or if your process is supporting you, not supporting you. But it also, over time, makes you confident in your creative selections. The example I give all the time is you go out and you find a lamp within the first 15 minutes, and then you spend 4 hours trying to talk yourself into another lamp to come back around to that one, and you wonder why you can't charge the client for 5 hours.
Yep.
To source a $200 lamp.
Yep.
And it was because if you had made the decision and trusted your gut or trusted your design, you could have been done in 15 minutes and moved on. And so when you start to realize how that lack of trusting yourself and confidence in your own design process and design aesthetic and selections, you start to realize how that's costing you because you're not pushing that off on the client. And then You're right, that research does go down. Also with maturity in design or in anything, your vendors, their lines, you're going to be able to do some things faster. But it highlights again why it's important to have trusted resources and trusted vendors that you can go to quickly, because otherwise you could spend days hunting for a lamp.
Oh my goodness, you really
or any item, right?
Really could. And I think, and we were talking about this earlier about how creative confidence and sort of the financial or business confidence are hand in hand. I would not have been able to start to right size those hours without having developed the creative confidence. You know what I mean? I would not have been able to tackle this without being able to really honestly say, I feel really confident in my decisions, in my selections as a creative professional. And I started from zero, and now I'm way past zero now. I'm still learning, but I feel like I have something valuable to offer. And I think if the first step is to value your own time before you can ask anyone else to value it.
Oh, preaching to the choir. Absolutely. Two things. One is I have an episode 52 that is a solo episode that is that's out before this one, just on confidence. And so I want to encourage everybody to go listen to that. But to jump on that comment, Courtney, about valuing yourself, I can't even tell you how important that is and how true that is. Little things, like even if we say to somebody, and again, for anybody who's been listening to me for any amount of time, I mean to do all of this with respect and integrity, right? And you can listen to any advice and take it down a negative path, but we're going to keep it on the positive path. And I mean it like this. If I tell a client that by and large, I am here for an hour with you, and I go an hour and a half to 2 hours, while it may seem in that moment to be a great idea, what I've done is just taught them that my boundary for the value of my time could be knocked down.
Yep.
And so now, why am I upset that the next time we're on the phone or the next time we're meeting and it's an hour, they expect to go to 2? Because I've set a precedent. When I've said to them that I don't respond to text and they text me and I keep responding, what have I told them?
Yep.
I've told them that I'm not going to hold to that. So I say those as just quick examples, because for us to value ourselves and value our time, we have to value our expertise. We have to value it, not in a way that overvalues it, not in a way that inflates it, but in a way that says, I want to have a fair and equitable exchange for my value, my time, my knowledge, my creativity, and your time and your pay. And if we're not careful, we will tip the scales in their balance every single time and then wonder why we can't keep up. Now we're stressed out. Now our financials don't show the amount of work we're putting in, and we get upside down and topsy-turvy and we want to throw our hands in the air. And so I know when I went all the way back to trying to get a hold of the financials in my business, and I've told my story multiple times, I literally had to sit down and go, what is business? What is hobby? Where am I my own worst enemy? And I think I did it at Luann Live where I said, stand up. Nobody can walk on you if you're standing up. You have to lay down. And I was thinking, where am I laying down and like, rolling out the red carpet over my body and saying, walk on me.
Right.
And that's a hard conversation to have with yourself, but it's empowering because I started realizing that I was diminishing my own value or allowing them to do it with words like just. It's just a small window treatment. It's just a paint color.
Yep.
All of those were diminishers meant to reduce what they thought my value was worth and what they wanted to pay me. And if I wasn't aware and I didn't catch it, if somebody called me and told me it was simple, their price went up. Because I thought sometimes the reason it looks simple, it's not simple. It looks simple, but it takes 3 times the work to make it look so simple.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And especially if someone, hasn't done an interior design project before, they really have no idea. And it isn't until the end that they say, holy moly.
Right. All of those moving pieces and parts that they have. Yep. It's like HGTV. It makes it look like, as Kat French said in her episode, she said, it makes it look like I can design your space in 30 minutes with 2 commercial breaks and $500. And I cannot do that.
Yeah. And I think it also speaks to, don't charge a low hourly. That rate speaks, it tells a message. And it communicates a bit to the client how to treat your time. And I have to tell you, as I've increased my hourly rate, the respect for my time that clients have has completely changed. If they think that they're they know the hourly, and if this part of the project is on hourly, and they are not going to just drive you mad with all of these little things, because your rate, demands that they don't do that.
Right.
And it's so much better to take that risk and raise it. And maybe you lose a project, which I know can be so devastating and it's hard always. But I always try to think, 6 months from now, would I be happy in this project?
But what it does is, by losing that one in the moment, it may feel scary.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is it's opening up space at a higher rate. So then the next person that comes in pays the higher rate.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you kept the prior project at the lower rate, you never have the opportunity to move up.
Literally just last week, I had a potential for a commercial project come in. And, I sent in my proposal and then the principal got on and basically was like, oh no, we need to lower this. This will be a great project. You can photograph it. It'll be great for your portfolio.
That was their just. Think about it. That was their right?
I said, we don't even have to, continue this conversation. At that point, I knew this is not going to be a good client anyway. But when I hung up the phone, I felt so empowered. Yes, I was disappointed, that I wouldn't have cool photos for my portfolio, but I also, through experience, recognized that would have been a nightmare.
But not at the cost of, not at the cost of selling out. How did they react when you're like, we can stop right there?
Oh, they a little shocked.
Yeah.
And, and I said, I don't think this is, quite going to be the right fit for us. I did it in a very nice way. Yeah. But I think it was shock. I think it was like, whoa, pretty much. And so, I know when, you're earlier on and you're starting and it's so hard to do. And I took on so many projects I shouldn't have. And I had so many nightmarish experiences. And it's only having been through that I can say this. But the earlier you can learn that lesson, oh my goodness, you're going to save yourself so much heartache, both, emotionally and financially.
Right. Because taking on those projects, we think, again, in the moment, we think that we're grasping. We think we need it. We got to have the sales in the door. But what we also don't understand in that moment quite often is that they are carving away at any confidence that we may have already built.
Yes.
If they're underpriced and if they go sideways, it takes one bad job to kind of knock your feet out from under you like that. Yeah. And so we have to, kind of be on guard for that. One of the things I was going to make a comment a minute ago, you said, don't start off with your hourly rate too low. I'm just, the part that saddens me that I think we don't understand. And I was on the Wingnut Social podcast, and Darla is so funny. And she said to me, Michelle, I'm not even really sure how marketing and financials go together. And I'm like, I don't know how to separate them, because whoever I'm marketing or advertising to has to be the same person who can pay the rates that I have, right? So yes. If I'm marketing to, let's say, entry-level homeowners, I can't price for the multi-million-dollar mansions. But if I'm marketing to the multi-million-dollar mansions and I'm pricing as if I'm a beginner, there's going to be a disconnect, right?
Yep, 100%.
Okay, and then the second thing that happens is if I come in so low to get them to work with me, kind of that, oh my gosh, you really like me kind of thing. Number one, they're going to do exactly what you said, by and large, which is take advantage of you. And you also were on such a learning curve that you're probably not going to charge for every hour, so you're going to lose even more money that way. Yep. And then thirdly, let's say that it goes well and they love you and they want to hire you for the next room, but now you know that rate is way too low for everything that you did. You are, in most cases, unable to then turn around and raise your rates significantly to what they need to be, because now they're not your client. They were your client at $75 an hour. They're not your client at $150 an hour. And so that means that if you have done any marketing, any word of mouth, the people that they may be word of mouthing you to are not going to be your clients. So now you're in this stuck position of feeling like you need to keep your rates super low so that you can get the work, when it's really self-defeating. So my suggestion is, you don't want to come in at some astronomical rate.
Right.
Be intentional about where you're playing, what you're coming in. And please, for the love of all that is good, do not think that hourly rate is your salary. Do not think that hourly rate is what you're making. So many people make that up. So then they think, I'm not worth that. This is a company rate. That's not your rate. I mean, if it's your rate, kudos. But I don't know any company where that is fully their rate. There are expenses that go along with it. And once those are taken out, you'll see that hourly rate is much smaller than what we think it is.
And I think 2 comments to that. I would rather see someone have a higher face rate and then, not bill fully for the hours. If you are a little less experienced and it does take you a little bit more time to do everything, I'd rather, instead of having a really low rate and charging a bunch of hours, have that higher face rate. Because to your point, when that client refers you,
yes,
they're probably going to tell this new person, what was your rate, and, I would, it's much easier to kind of manage your hours within a rate versus making a leapfrog on rate if you're going to be relying on client referrals. And I'm saying this through experience. I did it all the wrong way. And the second thing I would say is, when you are setting your rate, you can be intentional about it in terms of what your business looks like almost work backwards. Like, what's your target, gross profit, and then work backwards from that. And that might be an exercise that you go through with clients, but it sort of picking a number out of the air isn't the right way either.
Episode 11 with Tracy Taylor on my podcast, we do financials backwards.
Yeah.
And so we start all the way down with, what salary do you want to make? What profit do you want to have in the company? What percentage are expenses? What does that lead to gross profit? How do you want to charge? How do you move up? What part is, so that's a great episode to go back and listen to do exactly what you're saying. Because again, create a plan, a financial plan that supports where you're going, so that then you can support the marketing that we're now all going to master this year, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we mastered it. And then it's all going to support the vision that we lay
Yep.
out for the company. All these things work together.
And if that exercise, if you feel like you aren't comfortable enough, with the numbers to do it, then that is an excellent place to invest and hire someone to help you do that. If
Yes.
you've got resources and you're figuring out where to invest, that is one place to 100% do it, because that will transform your business in ways you can't even imagine.
Oh, I totally agree with that. So,
Yes.
Courtney, tell us, what are your next big profit goals? What are you said you were kind of in a figure it out mode right now. What are you figuring out? Where are you going? How are you conquering the world?
Yeah. So, I think my focus really right now is on real revenue growth. And so that means volume growth. I think that I focus less on just top line revenue and a bit more on real revenue, because I've struggled with my margins on product sales.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been really kind of experimenting with how to structure that within my contract, how to maximize it. Does it make sense for it to be a markup? Does it make sense to have it be more of like a purchase management fee? Does it make more sense from an accounting perspective to have all of the purchasing flowing through my books? Does it make more sense to, buy on behalf of the client and just charge a fee? So those are things that are really kind of top of mind for me. I think that on the expense side, the last year, I ramped up my expenses quite a bit, because it was time for me to really invest in PR, and that's a really big expense. Anyone who's really done it. But I felt like it was the right time. I was ready to do it, and it was a fantastic investment. I'm so glad I did it. And with regards to my workspace, so I think as I'm looking over the next 12 months, my expense side is gonna back off a little bit. So I'm not super concerned with that part of my business. So my real focus right now is really on that real revenue number and really juicing it. And so far this year, the story I was telling about the time billing, that's been like magical.
Yeah.
So I'm just sort of, continuing to focus on that and sticking with my, calendar blocking and my time billing. But it's really that product sales and the margin around that is an area that I have not quite landed on what works perfectly for me.
So just for those that are listening that may not know the term real revenue, that for many of us is similar to our gross profit. That term real revenue is one that's also used in Profit First, and it's the idea that this is the real revenue of your company. So it is the money that you have to run the rest of the company after cost of goods and materials and subcontractors. So
yeah, because I feel like a lot of times people just look at that gross revenue number and, I'm a X dollar business. And it's like, that really doesn't tell you the story.
Oh,
I think we talked about this during the panel. That can be such a misleading number. So
you tell somebody I'm $1 million company, meaning $1 million in sales, and then only 250,000 runs through to run the whole company.
100%.
Right? The truth is you're a $250,000 company, because
100%.
The rest of it is that 750,000 is product, is walking out the door. And so it is not building your company.
It is. It's I almost look at that top line as like a little bit of like an ego number.
It is.
Whereas the real revenue, that's the meat, that's the heart. And so as the business owner, when you're alone looking at your numbers yourself, don't look at the ego number, focus on the meat business.
Right. And I think that sales number is a stressful number. The stress
Very
of having
stressful.
that number so high. And so it I don't know. I love looking at the gross profit and the real revenue and looking at what percentage it is of total sales, because that's where I can, like you, that's where the secret comes into making this whole thing work.
And I think that when you break it out that way and you're really kind of looking at your numbers in that way, you start to see the power in product sales and cost of goods number, and what that margin really means to your business, and what the loss of that margin really means.
Yes.
And so it's like, if you're really struggling with making that work with your clients, how are you going to make that up? Do you call it, a purchase management fee and sort of disconnect it from the sale? Do you raise your rates significantly to try to make up for it? But I think when you break it down, and it's like what you can see is what you can analyze, and if you're just looking at that one, sort of sum number, you're just missing all of the information and the power that will actually transform your business. There's so much information in those numbers, and there's just, I can't say it enough how much power there is. And I will go back, if you feel uncomfortable with any of that, work with a consultant. Like, what you do, it's that is money so well invested.
Absolutely, it is. And honestly, that is one of the reasons that I built the course that I have too, the Understanding Your Financials, is how to read those documents, how to start understanding the definitions of what the numbers are telling you, so that you can start to grasp and then harness that power, right, of those numbers, making them work, and understanding, like, in the moment, this feels like the right decision, but how am I going to make that up? Where's that coming from? How does this impact further down the line? It's no different than being in a room and changing the artwork. All of a sudden, it's a different color palette. In the moment, you might have liked another piece of art, but if you've already pre-selected everything, you got to change. I mean, there's a ripple effect. And
that's a great analogy.
Right? So it's like you have this art that's all blues and greens, and then you show up and it's green, oranges and yellows. It can shift everything. That's why most people get so bent out of shape if a homeowner goes and buys something for the room that the designer has designed, because now I've got to put it in, and there is a ripple effect for you bringing home. The one I always love is either the big L-shaped sofa, or the great big, overstuffed kind of thing, or recliners, and you're thinking, oh, great, where does that fit in anywhere?
Right.
And just saying, that one choice at the time may have felt comfortable. It may have felt like you could take a nap, but you didn't think about the fact that it wasn't going to fit in the room, or you didn't think about the fact that it doesn't go with the scheme. And the same thing happens when we choose not to charge for something, or when we choose one or two little things like that. We don't realize that there's this whole ripple effect in our finances. But when you understand all the ways that our numbers fit together, you know that no decision like that is made in a vacuum. Yeah,
I love that analogy. That is so good. Yeah. The next time you're thinking about the financial number, look at it that way. It's like if your client put that hideous recliner in the middle of the living room and you're trying to make everything work around it, that it will not work.
It's going to cost you. That's all I had to say. It's going to cost you.
Yep.
Well, Courtney, I feel like I could sit and talk to you for the rest of the day.
I know, me too.
I just love you so much, and I'm so glad that we were connected, and I want to have you back.
I love it.
Yeah, and let's talk about, like, did we master our marketing? And I'd love to see how the visioning exercises work out for you.
I'm really excited about
email me and let me know.
Yeah, the 2 exercises you gave, about sort of figuring out what you don't want and the look forward to look back. I'm really excited about that. Yeah. I will report back.
Please do. I'd love to hear it. And if anybody else, if any of the rest of you do those exercises, I would love to hear how they worked for you. My goal here is to share what works with me and with my clients. And, everybody approaches it differently. Sometimes, like you, Courtney, we can come at it and have all these great ideas. And sometimes we're like, I feel stuck. And so there's got to be more than one way to get at it sometimes. So I do hope that it brings some clarity to you. How about that?
Absolutely.
So, Courtney, where can people find you? Where are you hanging out these days?
Sure. Well, you can find me on my website, which is www.rightmeetsleftdesign.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Right Meets Left Interior Design. I'm super active on Instagram. You can go on there, follow me, see me day to day and sort of what's inspiring me. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I can't wait to hear all of your exciting details, and we'll jump back on and do it again.
Definitely. Thank you so much. It was just such a pleasure being on the podcast.
I'm glad to have you. Have a good day.
You too.
A big thanks to Courtney for engaging in such a wonderful discussion about business. If you feel lonely or are unsure in some ways of your next business move, please reach out to me. I would love to help you. The Designer's Inner Circle is exactly the answer you're looking for. It's what I've created to solve that problem. And my team and I are poised and ready to help you move forward to the next business that you have on your vision board. The vision board Courtney and I talked about, let's help you get there. You can find more at scarletthreadconsulting.com. And always remember, profit doesn't happen by accident.